All right, this is going to cover the panel mount assignment. First thing to do after you open up NX, remember to go to the roles, change your role to advanced. We'll do that every single time. And for this one, we're actually going to open up a new file and start a new model. So we're going to go up to new. And once this other window pops up, so you can see this is all the sort of applications that we have available to us. So it's quite a lot. We want to go to model, and we want to make sure that we have a model selected. We can do assembly, sheet metal, all sorts of other stuff. We want to make sure that we have model selected. The other thing that we want to make sure that we have right is our units. So we want to make sure we are in inches. This is really important. You make sure that you have the right units selected before you actually start your model. In NX, it's incredibly difficult, pretty much impossible for us to change our units once the model has been created. You can do it, but it's really weird. So let's just make sure that we have our units correct before we start our model. The other thing down here, file name. So you have the name and the folder. Directories are really important with NX. We want to make sure that we are saving things in the correct location. This is the default file or folder that is selected for us. We do not have access to this folder, so you need to make sure that you are changing this every single time. You later on will look at actually making a folder and then saving it to that location. For right now, saving it to the desktop is probably the best thing to do. So I'm actually going to save mine to the downloads folder instead of the desktop. The way we change that folder location where it actually gets saved to, is we click on this little folder, and then we can actually change where it's saving it to. So I'm going to save mine. I'll save mine to the downloads. You save it to the desktop. Now with the save to the desktop, you can transfer it over to a flash drive or email it to yourself. Any way you want to go about doing that, especially if you're using the laptop or the computers in 216 or any of the computer labs on campus. Because what will happen is once you get off of that, it will wipe everything that's on that computer. So I want to make sure that you have it saved somewhere else so that you can actually access it later. So I'm going to save mine to the downloads. Hit OK. The other thing is the name. So all of our assignments are going to have a specified name that they need to be named. So we're going to make that change here. When we get into assemblies, the naming of parts becomes really, really important. So we want to make sure that we're naming them correctly from the get-go. We don't want to have to change the name of them. Again, we can change the name later on, but it's just going to make our life easier if we name them correctly here when we are creating the file. So typically the way that the naming works for these assignments is you'll have homework, and then whatever homework assignment it is. So this is O2 underscore, and then your UUID. Your UUID is not your U number. These are two separate things. Your UUID is essentially the beginning of your Memphis email. So my Memphis email is mhale2@memphis.edu. So my UUID is mhale2. That is not my U number. These are two separate things. So when I name this assignment, I'm going to name it homework 02 underscore mhale2. Now, don't use mhale2. Use your UUID, not your U number. Once we have it named correctly and we know where it's going to be saved to, where we make sure that we're in the right units, we are in inches, it's a model, we can hit OK. All right, so again, we're going to be making the panel mount. So this is a pretty simple part. It's essentially just a square with a hole in the center of it. There's a couple things that we need to address before we start making a model. The biggest thing really is we need to know what the model is going to be used for. And this goes back to the design intent of what we're creating. Design intent is a big part of modeling. The design intent of the component is going to play a major role in how we design it. There's a lot of features that we have available to us. There is many commands that we can use to create these models. But what decides how we create these models, what features we use, how we design certain things, goes back to the design intent. So the way that we are going to choose our design intent, or the way that the design intent of the component is going to be displayed to us, is through the part drawing. So on this panel mount, we have a 1 inch by 1 inch square. It is 0.125 inches thick. That's 1/8 of an inch. And we have a hole that is 0.242 inches in diameter. That's a C-drill. That's what we use as a tap drill for a 1/4-20 tap. And it is in the center of the hole, but it's been, or in the center of the square, but it's been dimensioned to us as 1/2 inch over to the right and 1/2 inch down. So it's in the center of that 1 inch by 1 inch rectangle. If we wanted to make sure that that hole was always in the center, we would have a note, something along those lines, or this would be dimensioned to us differently. But for right now, we've been told that it is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And so that's how we're going to actually model this. So a lot of what we do in this class is going to start off with a sketch. And a sketch is how we make a drawing or a 2D entity. It's going to be our boundary for what we eventually create for a 3D object. And the way that we start off a sketch is you come up here to sketch. And you'll see 3 planes. We've got top, right, front. And then we have this window that pops up that gives us a little bit more information. There's lots of ways that we can create a sketch. We're going to keep it simple right now. We're going to keep on plane, and we're just going to choose the top plane. See, as I come across it, it highlights. That's what we're going to select. So we want to highlight the top, and then just click with your left mouse button. And you see now we have all these that are available to us, the other options. Just keep those default for right now. We don't need to change anything, and we will hit OK. Then NX is going to orient us right above that sketch plane. And then also over here, we have some helpful tips if you want to, if you need any of those. I'm going to go back to the part navigator over here. Remember, the part navigator tells us our model history. And you can see that we have a datum coordinate system already created, and we are in our sketch 1 right now. Don't forget the way that we can orient and move this around. And then if you find yourself where you're not straight above the sketch anymore, see I'm orbiting right now, and I want to go back to where I'm straight above that sketch, you can hold down Shift and F8. And that'll orient you back directly above that sketch. So again, that's Shift and F8. And so the sketch that we want to draw is going to define the boundaries of our rectangle or our square. And there's lots of ways to do sketches. There's lots of different reasons to do a sketch a certain way. But these are our 2D entities that allow us to define the boundary of our 3D model. So again, this is 2D. Our drawings are going to be in 2D, and then we create 3D geometry from that 2D drawing. So you can see that once we went into our sketch, we have a bunch of different commands up here that we didn't see before. We, at one point or another, will probably use all of these, but for right now, we want to use our rectangle command. So when you click on rectangle, this window should pop up. This window gives us 3 different ways to create a rectangle. So this first one, this far left one, is by 2 points. So that means if I click on one location, now I'm not clicking and holding, I just click down, I can then define the rectangle this way. So then I'll click again, and now I have my rectangle, and I can go and I can define that however I want. the way in the middle is by 3 points. So I can click once, and then I get to define essentially the length of one side. Once I've decided how far I want it, I can click again, and then I get to decide the width or the height of that other side. The third is from center. So from center is I click, and that is defined the center of the rectangle. Then I will define the length and the width. You can see I clicked right here in the center. So now I'm defining the width of it. Now that center point is still in the center. And this is the one that I'm going to use to create this rectangle. Is I want the origin of our drawing to be in the center of our rectangle, or of our square. So you can see as I approach these lines, this little like dot appears. That's a snap point. It can be a little bit frustrating, but there's a trick that we can use to make sure that we're not snapping to the wrong things. One of the things is our snap filters, or our snap options. We will talk about that later. But what we're going to use for this one is if I just hover over a spot. You see how those three dots popped up? So let me do that again. So I want to click on this origin, but see how I can't really get to it for certain. If I hover over that spot, I'll leave it there for a second. Those 3 dots appear. Now if I click with my left mouse, this window appears and I get to select exactly what I want. So see, I've got a point on a curve. I've got a point on another curve. That's this axis and this axis. I also have the existing point, which is our sketch origin. That's the one I want to select. So I will click on that. And I'm not going to concern myself exactly with dimensions. I'm just going to click to, let's say about right there and about right there. Now, I can push down on the mouse wheel one time, or I can hit escape, or I can just exit out of our rectangle command. Now, a couple of things to note here. The color of these lines, see how they're like kind of brown? That means that they are partially defined. These are not defined lines. And we also have an indicator down here. See, sketch is partially defined with 4 movable curves. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 curves, lines that are not defined. We want to make sure that all of our lines are defined. If we have undefined lines, that means that there is no definite dimension to them, which, as you can guess, is not ideal. If we are dimensioning something, for making a model, we want to make sure that we have defined the size of that part, that model. And if we have undefined lines, we have not defined the size of that part yet. So it's critical that we have all of our lines, all of our curves defined. If we don't, our model is just not even almost correct. So we want to make sure that we have all of our lines and our curves defined. So you see that it's brown right now. This is a 1 inch by 1 inch square. There's a couple of ways to dimension these lines. The quickest and easiest way is, see how as I approach it, it turns red. It means that if I click, I'm going to select that line. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click and select that line, and this dimension pops up, this linear dimension. So I can click on that, and this allows me to dimension that line. This is a 1 inch line. If I hit 1 and enter, it's going to say, I'm giving my first dimension. Index is asking us if we wanted it to scale down the entire, we're going to hit yes. Otherwise, this would be really, really skinny and still long this way. We're going to hit yes. See how it's scaled everything down. And we're going to do the same thing for this other line over here. 1 inch on that one. And now sketch is fully defined. That's what we want for all of our sketches. Sketch is fully defined. And all of our lines have turned black. They're no longer that brown color. They are now black. So if the line is brown, it's not defined. If it is black, it is defined. You can change that color in the settings if you want to, but if you're fine with just seeing those colors, then go for it. So all of our lines are defined. we can exit out of this sketch. And the way that we do that is we go to finish. And we go to finish, we go back to where we were at before. And if we go to our part navigator, we can see that we've got our datum CSYS and that sketch. You can see if I click on that sketch, the sketch that we just made is highlighted. Now, so far, all we've done is create a 2D boundary. This has defined the boundary of our 3D model, the 3D geometry that we are going to create. And so on our part drawing, we have a 1 inch by 1 inch square, and it is got a 0.125 inch thickness. That thickness is what we want to create. That is that third dimension. We have an X and a Y, and that's our Z, is that 0.125. So we're going to do that is we want to extrude this. We're going to extrude this shape to a certain distance. And so we want to do the extrude command. So in the upper left-hand corner next to sketch, we have extrude. So I have nothing highlighted right now. I have not selected any sketches or anything like that. And I'm just going to hit extrude. Now this window pops up and asks us to select a curve. We can select a curve. There's another way to do it. So I can come over here to our part navigator and I can select that sketch. And then I can hit extrude. And it automatically sees the curves that we have selected. We could also just click on the sketch itself and hit extrude. So however you want to do it, any way is fine. If we hadn't have anything selected and we hit extrude, then you can then just select the curves and it'll select all of the lines creating that boundary. And this is how we create our 3D geometry from that 2D sketch. See, we're extruding that shape that we created a certain distance. Now, the distance that is automatically defaulted to for me is 1 inch. That's not what we want. So we have a start distance and an end distance. We have different ways to define how the shape is extruded. All we want right now is value. We're just going to stick with value. We want our start distance to be 0, and we want our end distance to be that 0.125. I'm going to hit 0.125. Again, just like we saw before or earlier, we've got OK, apply, cancel. If I hit apply, it performs the action, but the window still is open. It does not close it. If we hit OK, it would have changed that to 0.125 and then closed out of the extrude command. And if we hit cancel, it wouldn't have done anything and would have closed the command window. I hit apply, so it performed the action, and then I can hit cancel or exit out. Now we have our 2D sketch that has been extruded 0.125 inches, which is what we have on our drawing. Now the last thing that we need to do is we need to create that 0.242 hole, that C-drill hole. You might think that what we would do is create another sketch and create a circle and then extrude that circle. That is not what we want to do. When we have holes in our parts, we want to use the hole command. If we have round features, then we would use a sketch with a circle and extrude that. But when we have holes, we want to use the hole command. This is a very powerful command, and we want to take advantage of it where we can. So I'm going to go ahead and click on our hole command. And when it pops up, yours should be in simple, and this should all be default. But up here at the top, this drop down, we have simple, counterbored, countersunk, tapered, threaded, hole series. We have a whole bunch of different options to choose from. This is why it's so powerful and why we should take advantage of it. We want to do just a simple hole. Our hole size, we can do custom and define the 0.242, but it's been called out as a C drill. And so we can go, instead of custom, we can go to drill size. The size that we want is not quarter. It's going to be a size C. So this is the standard. We're going to use ANSI standard. We want a C size drill. and we want the fit to be exact. You can see the hole diameter right there. It's already saying a 0.242 inch diameter. That's what we want. Now, if I come over to the model, you see it's already showing the hole here. Now, we want to be careful with how we use these holes. What we need with a hole, and it's even telling us over here, we need to specify a point. We want to use points with holes. You can create a point lots of different ways. We could have created another sketch and put a point in that sketch, or multiple points in that sketch, and then put the holes where those points are at. That's okay. In fact, we'll do that later on with more complicated models. But NX gives us another way to do it. It makes it a little bit tidier, a little bit neater, especially when we look at like the part navigator. And so what we're going to do is where it says specify point, we want to go to sketch section. We want to go into sketch mode. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to take us back to another sketch. We want to select this top face. So last time we selected a plane, but we can also select a face. And it can be a face that we have made with that extrude command. And so we want to select the face of the top of our model. And so I'm going to click on that. It's highlighted the yellow, and I'm going to hit OK. Now we are asked to specify a point. So we're in a sketch, but the sketch is inside of the hole command. And this is why it's so cool, is because it doesn't create another sketch exactly. It just creates another sketch inside the hole command. And we want this point to be 5 inches over and 5 inches down. So I'm actually going to just click over here and hit close. So you can even see that this point, the point is where the crosshairs are at, that is going to be where the point that we just created. So you can see how it's brown. What did we just go over about that? What does that mean? It means it's undefined. And if we look down here, we have sketch is partially defined with one movable curve. And we need to define where this is located at. So if we look back to our part drawing, we have been told that it is 0.5 inches from the left-hand corner and then 0.5 inches down from the left-hand corner. And we want to define this point 1/2 inch over from the left-hand side of the square, and then 1/2 inch down from the top side of the square. So before, when we dimensioned like the lines, we just clicked on them, we gave it a dimension. We can't do that here exactly because we don't have a line to click on. We only have the point to click on. So what we want to do is click on the point, and then we can click over here on this axis, and we have a dimension that pops up. So again, all I did was I just clicked on this point and then clicked on the axis, and a dimension popped up where we can do 0.5, hit enter. Again, it's going to ask us if you want to scale. Yes. And now I can move it down, I can move it up, but I can't move it left and right. It has been defined in that orientation. Now I'm going over from the axis. So to do the top, if I click on my point and then I click on, I'm trying to click on the top of our sketch. I need to define it from that edge, but we don't have access to it right now. What we need to do is we need to come up here to our filters. We'll get into the filters a little bit more later on, but we do have access to this edge right here, this line that we can see. We can see it. We can still access it. What I want to do is where it says within active sketch only, I'm going to click on that arrow to drop down, and I want to select within work part only. Now, if I select within work part only, I have access to that line. Now you can see how it highlights. So I'm going to select our point, and then I'm going to select that top line. Now a dimension pops up, and I can define that as 0.5 inches. Now our sketch is fully defined. That point is 1/2 inch to the left, 1/2 inch down. Now we can finish this sketch. We hit finish, And we're back in our hole command. You see we have specified the point. It's the point that we've just created. And even that the hole is where it's supposed to be. We need to change one more thing though. You see how it's going through the part and then way down to the bottom there? Let's look at our part drawing to see how far this hole is actually supposed to go. If we look at our drawing, we can see that it says 0.242, and then we have a tolerance, and then we have through. So the through right there is telling us that it's a through hole. That means it goes all the way through the part. Now what we don't want to do is to just put in a distance here that's going to make sure that it goes through the part. You know, we don't want to say, okay, well, the part is 0.125 inches thick. Let's just do 0.126. That way it goes all the way through. It's not good practice, because what if we come back and change that thickness to 1/4 inch, 0.25? Well, then it's not going to be a through hole. Then it's going to be a blind hole. It's going to go down to a certain distance. That distance would be 0.126. So what we want to do is be able to tell NX that this hole is always going to go completely through the part. So instead of giving it a hole depth, when it says hole depth limit, where value is, we want to select through body. So the through body is going to go all the way through the model every single time. So if we come back and change this thickness to 4 inches, the hole will still go down that entire 4 inches. So if it says a through hole in your part drawing, make sure that you have through body as the limit. Change that to through body, and we can hit OK. We need to go back and make a change. You see how it's added these chamfers by default. That's a good practice to put in chamfers for your holes, but it's not called out in the drawing. So we need to go back and make a change, and that's okay. Oftentimes you have to go back in and make a change. There's a couple ways to do this. So you can double click on the C drill size hole, and it's going to take you back, or you can right click and go to edit with rollback. Edit with rollback rolls back the history to that point. If you just double click, it doesn't roll back the history. So edit with rollback is a better way to go and make those changes. So we can edit with rollback, where it says the chamfer, we're going to click that, and we want to just uncheck the start chamfer and the end chamfer. Hit OK. And there we have our hole. All right, this has been the panel mount assignment. Make sure that you submit that to the Dropbox on Canvas. Thanks for watching.